Welcome everybody to a multi-part series on the Video Game Connection entitled The Video Game Chronicles. This is episode 1, where I'll take you on a journey. Yes, so sit back, unless you're running or working or swimming and shit. Now that's cool. You must be rich with some cool ass waterproof earbuds. I mean, that's dope as shit. You know what I'm saying? Swimming and listening to podcasts. But if you're at Walmart, stop listening right now. Okay? Leave the store and resume the podcast once you leave the store. This podcast is never for Walmart. Never at Walmart. Okay? All right. So here it is. The Video Game Chronicles, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, but without that stupid character Jar Jar Binks. So let's go back, yeah, shall we? To, I think it was about 1980, around there. And me and my two brothers, well, my two older brothers, would go to the local arcade, and they would have to take me because I would be fucking begging and kicking and screaming. So they took me. It wasn't that far from our house. And we went to the arcade. And this was the first time I saw video games. Okay? And what I heard, you know. And at the arcade, it's noisy, man. It's beautiful noise because all I heard was the noises of asteroids, Pac-Man, Centipede, Donkey Kong, Frogger, Cubert, other historic arcade games, you know, just going all at the same time. People putting their quarters up, you know, getting ready for their game. It was usually, I think it was mostly single player games, and you had to wait. And if you had like a fucking master, right, at Donkey Kong, that guy could get through the whole game with one quarter. But that was rare. It was rare to find a guy like that. But you know what? My favorite game that my brothers played and then later I played was a game called Karate Champ. I don't know if you guys know about that game, but to me it was so cool, you know. Full point. Begin. Full point, you know. That was just, for some reason, I still love MMA. It just, you know, I love it. Whether it be Bruce Lee movies at the time, whether it be Jean-Claude Van Damme, or Karate Champ. I just like that shit. You know what I'm saying? UFC now. And, you know, before arcade games like these, it was about the pinball era. And maybe the 60s, maybe even the 50s and the 70s. And people would do that. They would go in, they would play the pinball machines at a local pool hall, whatever. Get really good. Those were still there at the arcades. And people would play them. They were fun. They had really great pinball machines, you know, up until, I don't know, the 90s, the middle of the 90s. I mean, they had some great pinball games. The Simpsons was one. I can't really remember the other ones, but there are some cool-ass pinball machines. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1978, the Atari 2600 came along for your home, and it cost $189.95. Why 95? Everything's like 95 around that time. I don't know if it is now, but it was $189.95. And come on, just say $190 for fuck's sake. But anyways, if you count inflation, that console today would cost $850. No joke. And you know what? Parents were buying it for their kids. The Atari 2600. Putting it on layaway. Thank God for layaway, ladies and gentlemen. Kids today, they don't know what that is. But what layaway was is, if you didn't have the money, you can go pay a payment to the store. Get the console. They probably had it on the shelf. They probably had a bunch in stock. Not like the PlayStation 5 nowadays or the Xbox Series X. They had them. They put your box, your system, into like a little cubby hole with your name and everything, all your information. And every time you went in, you paid it down from $189.95. When it went down to zero, obviously, that shit was yours. You could take it home. But not before that, you know. And if you're lucky enough and you're rich, only the rich people have the credit cards, just put it on a credit card, take it home like that. But, thank God for layaway. And the games mostly for the Atari 2600, for me, and even at the time, even as a little kid, I thought they weren't that good. Okay, they were not like the arcade games. Definitely not. Except for a few games on the Atari 2600 like Asteroids, Pitfall, Miss Pac-Man, a couple others. But for the most part, especially the sports games on the Atari, were god-awful. They were god-awful. But you know what? Without those sports games being made and developed, there'd be no MLB The Show. There'd be no NBA 2K. Because you got to build it on a foundation. And those were the foundations for sports games, back then. So I was playing the Atari around 1982, 1983, a little bit of 94. But honestly, at the beginning of 94, we stopped playing altogether. The games weren't that great, like I said. And I thought it was limited. But in 1985, ladies and gentlemen, okay, honestly, that's when the true beginning for home gaming systems began. The Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. And you know what? Changed the game forever. And what did it come with? Duck Hunt. I remember getting the system. We were so happy. And it came with that silver and light gray gun with an orange trigger. And Duck Hunt, man, it was like magic. I mean, how did it know where you were shooting, on the screen? But it did. It was kind of accurate, Apart from Duck Hunt, the first real solid game I ever played at home, and it was, to me, it was a true full gaming experience, was Super Mario Brothers, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this game had it all, at the time, for the time. Avoiding enemies, smashing them, collecting coins, by hitting them with your fucking head. Spitting fire when you got one of the mushrooms and it turned you into a little fireman. You're just spitting fire, you know what I'm saying? Riding on the clouds, jumping into pipes, and etc., etc. Super Mario Brothers was the beginning of those AAA games, those big, huge games. And it didn't stop there. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys a list of games that I just loved on the Nintendo Entertainment System to death. The Legend of Zelda. What a great game. What a long game. Great game, long game. First, I'm going to say for me, it was the first RPG that I ever played, okay? And it was fantastic. And you know what? I think the cartridge, which was a gold cartridge, that thing cost a lot. It cost more than the games today. I have to look it up, and I'll get back to you in episode 2. But I think it was more than $80. I'm not sure. So Legend of Zelda. Excite Bike. Man, I love that game. Very, very fun game. Ghosts and Goblins. And by the way, I would play Ghosts and Goblins with my radio next to me, and the whole time, over and over, I'd be playing Give It All You Got, right? Give it all you got. Give it all you got. Get up on this! And jam on it. Jam on it. To Ghost and Goblins. So whenever I think of those two songs, I think of Ghost and Goblins. Whenever I think of Ghost and Goblins, I think of those two songs. I put it up on Spotify. It just brings back memories, man. And that was a bit of a tough game for the Nintendo, Here's another game. Pro Wrestling. Do you guys remember Pro Wrestling? I love wrestling in the 80s. Pro Wrestling had the characters Starman, the Amazon, Giant Panther. I think the Amazon bit you in the head, bro. That was one of his moves. He would jump on you and then he'd bite you in the head. Starman, the Amazon, Giant Panther, and Hayabusa, etc. More characters, man. What a fun game. Tecmo Bowl, okay, with Bo Jackson. I think Joe Montana's in it. Walter Payton. Great players. Great, fantastic game. That game right there, whoo, we would have tournaments. We would have so much fun with Tecmo Bowl. I think every kid played Tecmo Bowl. Every kid has a fun memory of Tecmo Bowl. For me, I wouldn't want to say it out loud, but I loved the game DuckTales. You'd go around as Scrooge McDuck. You'd bounce around the pogo stick. Fun game, hard game. These games back in the day were a little tough, you know what I'm saying? That was a good one, DuckTales. Another game, Contra. Contra was an arcade game, but when it came to Nintendo, I played the hell out of it, you know what I'm saying? My brothers were older than me, like 6 years and 5 years. So while they were doing, playing sports with their friends and everything like that, I was playing the Nintendo more than them. And it was just the start of my hardcore video game obsession, to be honest with you. Video games. I'm a gamer for life, man. These guys, they're not gamers for life, okay? They went on to other things. But just like me, but I stuck with it, man. And, those times, those early days, in my opinion, the Nintendo Entertainment System was really good. But ladies and gentlemen, the Super Nintendo, okay? Woo! The Super Nintendo is one of my favorite gaming systems of all time. Ever. Might be in my top 5. Maybe top 3. I don't know. I gotta look at the other systems and evaluate it. And in the Video Game Chronicles, we will go through the Mount Rushmore of games, and we're gonna go through the Mount Rushmore of systems, among other categories. But the Nintendo, the NES, that system to me was like how I view the PlayStation 5 now. It was just amazing, And in episode 2, not right now, sorry ladies and gentlemen, but in episode 2, we will continue the Video Game Chronicles with the Super Nintendo to start it off. But honestly, guys, I've said it before, the 80s were so entertaining to me. And I think everything except the clothing and the cars. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. Who's designing the clothing? Who's designing the cars? But the 80s had a lot of cocaine. Okay? So I think these guys were coked up, bro. The clothing was horrible. The cars looked like shit. How do you make a Mustang, okay? Like a 1969 beautiful Mustang and other years. How do you make it look like shit? But they did. But aside from that, in the 80s, movies, music, sports, wrestling, professional wrestling, I'm saying, and of course, video games were just in top form and epic at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Homeboy88 for the Video Game Chronicles, episode 1. We're going to come back with episode 2. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this, the beginnings of video games, and for me, my experiences. This is just part 1, ladies and gentlemen. More to come. Thank you. Peace out. Peace out.
You're listening to a Homeboy 88 production.